If you're looking for visionary conversations that push the boundaries of everything you thought you knew, welcome to Conversations Beyond the Cutting Edge, where every month, veteran broadcaster, author, and media consultant Sandie Sedgbeer invites two leading authorities from distinctly different fields to engage in a deep dialogue focusing on the latest discoveries, information, and insights on some of today's most provocative metaphysical topics. Here's your host, Sandie Sedgbeer.
Hello, welcome to part 2 of this Conversations Beyond the Cutting Edge with visionary speaker, integration specialist, multidimensional communicator and author of Awesomeism, A New Way to Understand the Diagnosis of Autism, Suzy Miller, and Australia's leading authority on ET phenomena and author of The New Human, Awakening to Our Cosmic Heritage, Mary Rodwell, who's widely recognised for her work with families and children who have had encounters with non-human intelligences. Mary Rodwell, Suzy Miller, welcome back.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
So I want to touch on the affinity for the colour and the word blue, because we're hearing so much about blue beings. Are blue beings more relevant to what's going on now than other beings? Suzy, I know you've certainly had experiences with blue beings, so why don't you lead off?
I don't know the answer to the question as far as more relevance now than ever. They've been around for quite a while. As far as in my own experience, they've been part of my family of origin, is what I understand, or my galactic family. And one of the things that I think that they probably are coming more into the forefront now because more and more people are understanding their galactic origins. I think that's coming more into the collective consciousness. So that might be part of that process. But yeah, blue is a very significant color in my world for sure. These beings have been around to help me integrate. They've been around to be a protective mechanism, you might say, when I was going through challenging shifts in my own consciousness. One of the things that the children have often said is they would say there's a blue star in the center of every consciousness, every human being, every sentient being, there's a blue star. And that blue star is the interconnectedness of all things. It's like the blue star is the commonality, you might say. And you might say that's the construct for the unified field. Yeah. And so the kids have talked about blue stars and spheres, the blue beings that in my mind's eye anyway are very tall and very blue and are quite capable of exchanging information almost like in a flash drive, like in a download flash drive. So, so Mary might
Mary,
know.
you've had a lot of experience with the extraterrestrials. Have blues been more significant in your experience than the experiences of the families that you work with?
Certainly they do come up a fair amount, but it's not necessarily something that I've tapped into as being primary. Although many, as I say their special friend is blue, and we do know from those that relate to the star nations that Arcturians are particularly certain Arcturians have got a blue frequency. I was just thinking about that, and it came into my head. Isn't it interesting that Avatar, the film Avatar, was blue? I think there's something very significant in what we're actually seeing there, or whatever. But I will say to you that I can think of a family already in Australia. All of the 7 children have had experiences and have drawn the beings. But one of them, she's not 17 anymore. I think she's probably 18 now. But she's drawn about 250 different beings and intelligences of all different kinds that she's interacted with. I don't think we quite realize just how connected we are to multiple civilizations in different forms, and one of the interesting things with our survey was that when we did the Dr. Edgar Mitchell free survey with 4,200 people, it was the human form, the humanoid form that was first, before even the greys always are shown up, but actually it was the humanoids that were actually the most common. But certainly what we understand, the Arcturians are particularly significant on the planet, as they seem to be guardians of this planet from what I've heard. And maybe that's the reason, one of the primary reasons the blue frequency is so important. And the indigos, one of the things about the qualities of the indigos is they're warriors. They've come to challenge the mindset, challenge the paradigm. And boy, do we need that. So maybe that's the reason it's become a significant frequency.
That makes sense to me too, Mary, because when the blue beings first showed up for me, and I asked more from a galactic standpoint, they were Arcturian, and they just would say, "You know yourself to be Arcturian," is the way they put it. So
yeah.
Well, I don't know an awful lot about the different star races, if you like, but certainly what I've read about the Arcturians, they seem to be a lot more compassionate and very involved in, very evolved in parenting, the way they perceive parenting. And as I understand it, not everyone, they will not allow everybody to be a parent. They have to be of a particular kind of persuasion. So do you think perhaps because, parenting at the moment, we have all of this energy around parenting because of so many children that are neurodiverse. I mean, parents are not parenting in the way that, my parents parented. So do you think that, maybe the blue beings, maybe if they're Arcturians, that there's an extra reason, because of that their energy is here on the planet?
what I like the idea of in that conversation, Sandie, is that you just gave me an idea of, the book We the Arcturians, where they talk about, education and they talk about parenting and things like that. I mean, it might be a very good protocol for some of the parents that are, attempting to parent children diagnosed on the spectrum, because it's a very, that book really hit me when I read it, as far as like, yes, that makes perfect sense to me.
Well, there are no accidents, and we know that, parenting is so different today. I mean, parents are far more involved, than they've ever been in their children's lives. And to have guidance or even just the energy of beings who, have an evolved view of this, is it coincidence? Perhaps not. What do you think, Mary?
Well, I don't think there's any such thing as coincidence. What I would say is what is fascinating about the children and, the older generations that remember being on board craft and being assisted to expand their abilities and to gain new information. So it's not just the parents doing, helping that soul be human. We've got many of these intelligences doing the same thing. And when you hear about, I always recall this lovely 8-year-old couldn't wait to tell me that a few days before she'd been taken up on the spacecraft, shown how to fly the spacecraft, taken to a planet and shown how to levitate and use her third eye, and then shown genetic engineering where they were saying we mix species and we seed other planets. She couldn't wait to tell me all of this and what have you. So it isn't just the human, where I think the human parent is there teaching and helping this soul that might be the first incarnation as a human, how to be human. You've got these intelligences from all over the galaxies that are connecting to the souls that are maybe part of their origin or family, giving them the hints on how to operate multidimensionally, because at the moment we're not too good at it down here in working out how to work multidimensionally, whereas on board craft they can actually show them how it all works and help them to understand it. And they're taught everything from cosmology to how to use all their abilities, to how to heal, etc., etc. And in fact, the syllabus, I talk about it in my presentations, is quite incredible in terms of how they're helping these children to activate all of this understanding, so that when I think the new schools come in, and there's got to be a different kind of school, where I call it where the children are given the environment to expand their abilities and to teach us what we don't know, and to teach us how we need to support them so they can be fully functional when the time comes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, Paul Wallace was talking about there have been quite a phenomena, quite a commonality amongst young children, especially young boys, of being driven to wake up at night, get on their bikes and go into the woods. And there they actually meet, star beings or whatever, who it's almost like a night school for them where they're taught all kinds of things. Do you have any knowledge of that, either of you?
Suzy?
What I was going to say is that what the children say and what comes through in private sessions quite a bit is, this idea of that the parent feels like they're here teaching the child. And I always say, the kids say over and over again, no, you're only here helping us understand the body. We're here to help you evolve into greater states of consciousness, into greater capacity. And so, you can say, yes, there are children that are going out in the woods and learning from beings in the woods. My own early experience would be able to acknowledge that I would go out and sit in the trees and sit with the trees and have that whole consciousness kind of give me information. So that makes perfect sense to me. I think the other piece is Mary mentioned this about the schools, that when we really get to the place where we're open enough as a humanity to be able to learn from the multidimensional skill sets of these kids, and I think we're very, very close, because there's all of these opportunities presenting right now where, whether it's a child learning from a higher dimensional being or a parent learning from a higher dimensional child, no matter how you cut it, the learning is coming from consciousness itself, right? And the more that we give the floor to consciousness itself, whether it's coming through the children or coming through these galactic beings or whatever, the more we're going to jumpstart ourselves in our own human evolution, right? It's like, yeah.
It
A lot of
touches.
people.
Sorry, Sandie. I was just going to say.
No, go ahead, Mary.
Well, the thing with the woods, I'm just going to throw this in as an adjunct to everything, is I did a regression many years ago to a friend of my daughter's who wanted to do just a past life. She just wanted to, she had curiosity about a past life. And she went back to medieval times where she was a medicine woman or a healer. And she wanted to, I asked her questions about what did she do and how did, and then I said, how did you learn what the properties of the plants were and how they did the healing, expecting to hear an older wise woman or an older wise man or something showing her all the things. And she said to me, well, I learnt it all in the woods. And I said, so how did you learn it in the woods? And she mentioned a 4-foot grey being with long fingers and what have you, who taught her what herbs. And so everything was coming from this little being that she was seeing in medieval times. And I'm telling you, this was the last thing in the world that I was expecting, and it blew me away. But what it was demonstrating, of course, is what many of the indigenous tribes were saying, how they've been taught by the star beings. A lot of different things, including in Australia, the Aboriginal, the Indigenous talk about the seven sisters coming, and them coming from the Pleiades, and the little beings that show them where water was, where to grow things, and what have you. So this is, to me, just an indicator that all through our history, we've been supported and helped by these different star nations that are visiting us.
Mary, the Aboriginals, we know that their DNA is quite different than the average human's DNA. We know that, in a sense, their time is passing. They're fewer than we've ever had, and they haven't been treated very well. Do you kind of see a handing over of the baton, for humanity, to help humanity understand, from the Aboriginals to the children? Because it seems like we're losing an incredible source of wisdom, and yet at the same time, we've got another incredible source of wisdom coming through.
I think you're quite right in the sense that the Indigenous across the globe are fully aware of the star nations. They're fully aware of their connection. And certainly, interesting, only recently I met an Indigenous Aboriginal elder grandmother who had talked about, as a child, always talking to, the stars and the beings in the stars and what have you, but shut down because she was being brought up in a conventional religion that was imposed on her and telling her she can't do this anymore. But what was interesting was recently, because, she's someone who lives very close to me, I noticed that she was writing madly in a journal. And I said, what is it that you're writing? And she said, I don't know, but all these images and scripts and codes seem to be coming to me. And I said, you do know what you're doing, don't you? She said, no. She said, I just know that they keep giving me all this. I've got to just keep doing it. And she's an artist as well. And I said, well, these are the codes. This is the download. And this is, where they're actually helping to upgrade. And they have the codes have different energies to assist us to get past the old programs that are helping us defrag. It's like a spiritual defrag, for want of a better word. And this is what's happening. And they're still open to that. So, they've still got a really important role in assisting us, because they're more likely to honor what they get than those of the Western nations that are so afraid of bringing this in case they're seen as crazy or fantasizing or whatever. But the Indigenous are still doing that and staying to that path. Right across the North American Indians as well are doing exactly the same. They're telling us because they still know. And I think they've got a vital role in helping with this shift that's actually going on.
People are waking up en masse, and people are suddenly, being able to, speak light language, and they never knew they could, or they're going to see symbols, or they're receiving codes, and it's so many forms, color, light, etc. And of course, it's all frequency. And I wonder, are the children aware of those frequencies? Are they aware of what is happening to all of the adults and what these codes mean, and what the light language means? Or is it something that is so innate to them they don't even think about it?
In my experience, the kids are definitely aware of it. It depends on what level of consciousness you're tapping into. If you're tapping into their mental human consciousness, some of the kids will be completely aware of it all the way into that field. And others, you're kind of moving into it when you move into the higher states of consciousness. That's what they're aware of. But really early on, when the kids started talking about how to share this information and how to get this information across, it was color, it was sound, it was movement. it was those kinds of things where those codes could more easily be embodied for people that might be a little bit more lack the curiosity, you might say, to go there. Yeah. But the kids, from what I can tell, they absolutely know that those codes are coming in. And I know it too by when I'm speaking with them in light language. A lot of times I can't get the information for a parent from if I'm just connecting in that way. But if I move into a different frequency band, there's all kinds of information that's available that wouldn't be available in a different band or a different frequency. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's said that our software is being upgraded through multiple frequencies that are coming to activate dormant, DNA, multidimensional cells, so that we can operate more freely with our staff families. And it's coming in, astrology. The astrology is lining up. It's bearing out everything that we're hearing. It seems to be like a coordinated influx. Do either of you have any information about who or what is behind that influx? Who's doing the orchestrating?
Do you want to go,
Mary?
Sandie? Oh, okay. I believe we are. Because ultimately, if we look at our connection to source, however you want to term that source, is we're all connected to assisting this planet to evolve. So in our oversoul self, we're all orchestrating what we need to give us the guidance to get us through this human journey and to do what we've come here to do. Many have the sense of mission and purpose. And they'll often come to me and say, Mary, I know I've got something to do, but I'm not sure what it is yet, And I sort of have a little quiet chuckle to myself and I say, but you're already doing it. I said, your soul isn't going to let you miss the bus because it's worked too darn hard to get you here to start with. So we're all part of that, and we're all connected to the source. So in sense, who is behind it? We are. Every single one of us is the way that I understand it. And we've decided it's time that the planet Earth needs shifting. And what's fascinating is many of those that come to me that find out that they're part of the team that's come to this planet from all stations west, and I mean by all over the cosmos, interdimensionally, extra-dimensionally, on all levels of frequency, have come in with certain skills to assist this planet and its consciousness to evolve along with all those beautiful souls that have come here to be part of this major, major shift. So that's how I understand it.
I love that answer. Sorry, I love that answer, Mary, because it's exactly what the kids talk about all the time. It's like we're so conditioned to look outside of ourselves, even the galactic part or the guides and all of this energy that is perceived outside of us. And the kids keep saying, no, it's part of our totality.
Yeah.
It's part of the totality of what we are. So we are those galactic beings. We are those angelic support systems, just like that girl that in the story before, it's like talking about, I am that presence, whether I'm in a body or out of a body. And yeah, it was a great reminder. Thank you for moving it right back to inside of us, because it's exactly what the kids say. It's the totality of us.
Well, this is really important, Mary, for people to hear, because there are many, many, many of us who look at the world and, the parlous state that it's in right now and thinking, it's not working. Whatever we came to do isn't working. And I'm only one person and I can't help it work, when in fact our very presence and our intentions, and the thoughts that we have and the consciousness that we hold is actually working on another level that can't be seen.
The way that I look at it, when people ask me about, are we going to achieve what we've come here to do? And I've got two answers to that. One of them is all these wonderful souls that are incarnating and have been incarnating are not, I say they haven't come with all that ability, all that awareness, all that understanding for a waste of time, because they would have known previously before they came whether or not it was going to work or not. And they would have, like myself, I've often made a joke about them saying, well, Mary, you're going to work really hard on planet Earth and you're going to, bust a gut and all the rest of it. But sorry, in the end, it's not going to pan out. I'd have said, well, you can go and find some other volunteer, because I'm not doing it.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
that assumption, I think it's going to work. At least I hope so.
Yeah. And I do think it's important for people to take that on board, that it is working. Just every time you hold a really positive intention, it's working. Yeah. So we're going to take a short break now. You're listening to Conversations Beyond the Cutting Edge. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and smashing the embargo on truth with me this month, our founder and principal of Australian Close Encounters Resource Network and author of The New Human, Awakening to Our Cosmic Heritage, Mary Rodwell, and integration specialist, CEO of Blue Star Education and Research, and author of Awesomeism, A New Way to Understand the Diagnosis of Autism, Suzy Miller. We'll be back with more from Mary Rodwell and Suzy Miller after this break. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Om Times TV.
Hello, I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, host of Om Times' flagship radio show, What Is Going On? And as an author, editor and 13 times book judge who's read thousands of books and interviewed hundreds of authors, I'm constantly asked what's really worth reading and what's not. So I created the No BS Spiritual Book Club to help you save time and money by picking the brains of discerning names who have walked this path before you. There's no catch, no fees and no BS, just an ever-growing library of 10 best spiritual book lists from some of your favourite authors and teachers, plus free book excerpts, audios and video interviews with people like Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., David G., Lee Harris, Mark Nepo and more. From well-known classics to hidden gems you've never heard of, it's the only no BS guide to the best spiritual books to enlighten your journey of self-discovery. So why not join the club? Get inspired and save money at the nobsspiritualbookclub.com.
Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
Everything that we do, we can do in a contemplative manner. Through the art of contemplation, you can use the gene keys in a really powerful way. Gene Keys is basically the code book of life. In the Gene Keys, the book is made up of these 3 levels: shadows, gifts, and cities. And the journey is through those 3 levels, kind of unpicking of the shadow states, the releasing of the gifts, and then the embodying of this higher consciousness called the city. And the cities are very exalted words. And it's not like we kind of suddenly are all these exalted Christ-like beings, but we have flashes and illuminations along the journey. And the more we get stuck into the journey, the more illumination comes to us, because the more we're releasing the light from in these codes inside our DNA. So all those revelations are inside us. So the contemplative way is the inner way.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Welcome back, Mary Rodwell, Suzy Miller. I know, Mary, that you have talked about our DNA being portals to other dimensions. Can you expand on that?
Yes, Sandie. Very much the 3D part of me, the ex-nurse, wanted to know more tangibility. I'm always looking for balancing out the information that we have in our 3D world with what we understand multidimensionally. And the first thing, looking at us as a species, knowing that there are anomalies in our DNA. And, I talk about Dr. Francis Crick, co-founder of the DNA molecule and author of Life himself, saying that we were designed, that we were a designed species, but and very clear about the fact that this was the case. And looking back into our history, we look at, Neanderthal, Cro-Magnon, and all these other so-called primates that eventually evolved into Homo sapiens sapiens. But there's a missing link. There's no explanation for twice the brain size, no explanation for 223 genes that were added to our genetic makeup, for example, that can't be explained. So yes, I think there's enough now out there, and there's certainly many geneticists that say that we're intelligently designed. So having said all of that, who was behind it? Some say 12 different species were involved in our makeup, and some say even 22. I don't know for sure either way. All I know is that we've got many different intelligences keeping an eye on us and have been keeping an eye on us all through history. So we've got, and often they were termed gods. And I'm not here to rattle anybody's cage or anything, but, as far as I'm concerned, that if you're an advanced species and you can do things that seem magical, you're going to be seen as gods. And I believe that they have been monitoring their creation all through our history. We have only about 5 to 10% of our DNA that they understand. The rest they have got no idea. They used to call it junk DNA. 90% is not understood. They've no idea what it's for or what it's about. My understanding from what I've learned is that there are properties to our DNA that we're only just discovering. For example, 1 gram of DNA can contain all the information that's on the internet. Just 1 gram. Just think of what is hidden in our DNA. And I believe that personally is our Akashic records, because we have everything encoded, I believe, in our DNA. And as it gets activated, more and more of that will give us the ability to access our multidimensional abilities. And I go back to a film that's quite old now, and it's called Lucy. And it's a film about a drug runner who has drugs inside of her that actually were a new kind of drug. And this drug actually ends up activating more of her dormant DNA. And as it does so, she becomes more and more and more multidimensional in her abilities, till in fact she completely becomes light. And I think that was one of the ways of showing us how we are going to shift once we get more and more activated of that dormant DNA. And part of what's going on with the solar flares, with the frequencies in the planet, the children bringing in frequencies, there's an activation of consciousness going on multidimensionally, where we've got codes activating us, and a whole range of other things probably I'm not even mentioning, that are all part of this activation that's going on. And what is it activating? It's activating the potential of that 90% of dormant DNA, which is part of who we really are. And that really will, in my understanding, create super beings. We will become what we see. We get all these programs, people with super talent, super abilities and what have you. But you also need to have the spiritual understanding to manage that, because otherwise it would be chaotic and it wouldn't perhaps work. But what what is important is doing it in a way where you've got that spiritual awareness to manage it in a way that is in the right balance. What does that mean about the DNA? They also have discovered that DNA is holographic in nature, and that when we get intuition, we get those feelings of knowing, sensing, clairvoyancy, and what have you. That is our DNA accessing the multiverse. It creates portals. Our DNA can create portals into other into the matrix, if you like, and that's how we get this sensing or this knowing or this feeling, or we get focused on a particular bit of information, and that is what we're putting through as a frequency through the portals, and we draw that information to us. That's how we start to get an understanding of something, is because we're sending out the frequency. I'm interested in this. It's like a pregnant woman suddenly noticing everyone around her is pregnant. What is that? We're actually putting out into that portal, that frequency, through our portals, which is our DNA. We are portals, in fact, to the multidimensional aspect of our reality, and beyond that. In fact, way beyond that, way beyond that. So,
Suzy, do you ever talk to the kids about this?
Yeah, it's just making me smile because in the newsletter that just went out a few days ago, the line at the top was, you are the new world portal. You're not waiting for the new world to exist. It's like you are the activation of that experience, because as that DNA is getting activated, as the consciousness is expanding, you are the portal of that new world. And the more that, what the kids will say is, the more that is the more people that are tapping into that and even considering that they can be that portal, that DNA is activating, and when it's active, it will spontaneously activate that in others who are open, just by interfacing with people, just by having a conversation with people. It's that transfer of information is, it's exponential. It continues to expand and grow and very naturally and organically, just because one person activates that within themselves.
Well, it's interesting that, everything is converging all at once. And, as you said earlier, Mary, you don't believe in accidents, neither do I. But we're, on the verge of AI exploding. And we've had a lot of conversations about transhumanism. And, if this is going to be part of our future, then you're absolutely right. If this is going to happen and we are going to become hybrids yet again, but, perhaps with inanimate material, we have to have that consciousness and that understanding of spirituality in order to control that. So that the kids are here now, as we're also, technology and AI, etc., is so meaningful.
I think that we are a planet that is based on fear a great deal, and this is something everybody fears. The way that I understand it, some souls may choose that as a reality to experience and grow from, as well as the others are going to choose, no, now I've experienced, maybe they've experienced what they've needed on that level and of choosing actually a different path. Really, it's just, to me, it's about having an experience, a soul journey, an adventure in different levels of reality, different levels of difficulty. And the more that we challenge ourselves, the more that we grow and we learn from that experience. So it's not either that it's good or bad. It's more that it's a chance to experience and grow as a soul, to understand more of what we are and what we're capable of. So for some may choose that way to go and will be learning and growing from that, where others are saying, no, this is the path now that I want to choose. Because it came very clear when I did a lot of past life work that, you'd get someone going through a very difficult past life of limits. And I will say to them, when they come into that new spiritual realm, what did you learn in that life? And they may say, well, I learned about limits, or I learned about compassion, or whatever. In my next life, I'm picking my parents and siblings to teach me more about this particular part of experience, what have you, because I want to grow in that area as well. So I don't see anything as an accident in that sense. The soul has chosen the journey. What we do have choice in how I understand it, is our attitude to it, whether we want to see ourselves as a victim of that, or whether we want to see the silver lining that particular experience is. And this is what we're being shown transhumanism, we're shown new earth, new being, new advanced soul, and everyone will choose what works for them.
Suzy, do you know if anybody is actually looking at the DNA of some of the children to see whether there's any physical differences that, visible?
I haven't heard about the research around the DNA. Maybe Mary knows more about that. I have seen research about like neurological function, what parts of the brain are lit up, what parts aren't. I've definitely seen research around, the capacity of these kids and like some of the reflections back of that DNA being different. But I haven't heard, have you, Mary? Have you heard of that being studied as far as the actual DNA of the kids?
There has been in the past, I've put up in presentations where someone had found an extra DNA strand on a child, I think, in the UK. There was another child in China that they believed was a new genetic architecture because he could see in the dark and could read in the dark. And there's also something to do with healing. And what they discovered was something to do with codons. And it was to do with a child that was born with mother who had AIDS. He was born with AIDS. And they were testing him over several years. And they found by the time that he was 6, there was no evidence of AIDS at all. And they said he had more codons switched on. Instead of the 20, he had 24 switched on. And they believed there were other children like that were more immune to certain illnesses and diseases. So there's stuff, there's little snippets coming out that are saying there's something going on, there's something changing, but there's nothing, as far as I know, that's overwhelmingly obvious at this time. And if it is, maybe we're just not being told.
Can I ask one question, Sandie, of Mary? I'm curious about the codes and the activation of the DNA. Do you feel that is there like a bit of a fail-safe in that, where that activation is occurring according to the consciousness of the individual or their readiness to experience that, whether they know they're ready, at a human level or not, that's different. But do you see that there's kind of like the Arcturians, there is a natural progression and growth so that someone does not destroy themselves with that expanded consciousness?
It's a good question, and I can only say what my sense is around it. I feel, let me just give you a little bit of an idea of how this is. I think it depends on the level of frequency and awareness and acceptance of the soul of that. And to me, that would make a lot of sense, because again, I think that the soul is making choices. Do I want to go this way, or do I want to go that way? So if it's choosing more of the 3D reality this time, it will choose not to accept the frequencies that are going to activate more of their awareness. That's how I've come to understand it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
What can we do to help ourselves, expand to the point where we can meet the kids where they're at? What can we do to help them and others through this transition that's going on? Do either of you have any suggestions there? Have the kids given you any suggestions to pass on, Suzy?
I asked this from the beginning, Sandie. It's like, what do I tell your parents? It's like, okay, you're showing me all this. Where do we start?
Yeah.
And, basics. I mean, with the basics, it's like, one, be curious, have more questions than you have answers, is something the kids say a lot. The other thing that they say is be authentic, be real. That one of the challenges that the kids really have in kind of interacting and connecting with their parents, especially in their waking state, is because we've been so conditioned out of just being who we are, just being authentic, feeling what we're feeling, saying what we're feeling. Those basic kinds of things really do create an amazing bridge, or you might say an amazing opening, so that the kids can get in. One of the other things that the kids used to say all the time, and I had so many parents coming going, I don't want my children sleeping in my room. I don't want them sleeping in my bed with me. It's like, how can we get them back into their space? And I would ask the kids, and they'd say, the problem is that when we want to sleep in our parents' room, because the minute they go unconscious, we can feed them with all kinds of information that is opening up their awareness. And so we're in the space in order to recognize that that's when they've gone out. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, they've shared different things like that, but I think it's as simple as, can we expand our curiosity? Can we be okay being a little uncomfortable in the unknown? Because the moment we kind of create just a little crack, that consciousness that the kids can fill up that and expand people really. I mean, just like it did for me. I mean, exponentially, you go from one mindset to a completely different one just because you were open or curious or didn't quite know what to do. So, yeah.
I think, for me, one of the things I try to remind myself of is that, we're so indoctrinated as, we're the adults. We have all the information. You're the child. You don't know anything. We will teach you. To turn that around and say, you teach me, you tell me what I need to know or how I need to be or how the world is as you see it. We need to have more of that.
Yeah.
I think
the more we understand that there are teachers. Yeah, sorry, Mary, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say that one of the things I've discovered with the parents is they don't know what to look for, in terms of they'll hear just the odd thing which piques their interest, but they don't know how else that child is operating. So I've got a questionnaire that is for children, which I send to the parents. And it's asking things like, do you see energies? Do you see colors? All this kind of thing. And the parent will come back to me and say, I had no idea that my child was seeing this or experiencing this, because they didn't know what questions to ask. So it's giving them a tool to find out what's going on with the children. And the other thing the children have always said is, if they'll only listen. So they say, well, what can I do? I said, you've got to listen. You've got to listen and ask them about what's going on and how they experience something. Get them to draw what they see or experience, so that you've got a better understanding of how because they don't know what's okay and what's not okay. And they may think you're experiencing exactly the same thing. And so they don't even think to question it. So giving the parents an idea of the difference in how they're perceiving reality and their child is receiving reality gives them a deeper understanding. You know this, Suzy, anyway, is educating the parents to the point. And also the one thing the kids say is, if only they'd listen. If only they'd listen.
Yeah.
And they're the two important ones, I think.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because, here we are in an age of helicopter parenting, as they call it, where parents are more engaged with their kids than ever. And at the same time, they know far less. I mean, there was a case that was in the news recently of a young adult boy who died, and his parents thought he was a loner. He had no friends. He spent all his time in his bedroom playing on his computer, games and things, and was shocked at his funeral when hundreds of people turned up. And these were his friends. He had this rich life online through his games. He had, all the socializing he needed and wanted. And the parents didn't know.
Yeah.
They thought he was a lonely child. So we don't know enough about our kids, and we don't ask.
Mm.
This is something that's come about for kids on the spectrum too lately, Sandie, because there's a woman named Kai Dickens who started something called the telepathy tapes. She's talking to families all over the place who have kids who are telepathically communicating, and a lot of times a parent will say, I want my child to have friends. I think he's a loner. I think he's, he only sits on his bed with his covers over his head. And, but what they're finding out now is that all of these kids who are nonverbal are telepathically communicating with each other on something called the Hill. And they all go to this place at the Hill and they make this connection. They're interacting with each other. They're talking to each other. And so, it's like, again, I love, Mary, what you said about that questionnaire, because it's absolutely true. I mean, and no fault of their own whatsoever. I mean, how would you know what questions to ask when you're parenting a multidimensional being, a person who knows their multidimensionality and experiences that, and if they only think that that's the way it is for everybody, then there's miscommunication going on all the time. So I love the idea of creating some kind of form like that for that communication. Yeah.
Yeah, because all we know is what we've experienced.
Exactly.
And most parents today will have experienced going out and, meeting their friends at different places. And so they think that that is life.
Yes.
And if their child isn't doing it, they have no life.
Exactly. That's it.
Yeah. It's such a, we're on the threshold of such a complete radical, change. It's impossible to even begin to get a grip on it and, where it's going to take us and what it's going to look like. All we can do is try and fit it into a model that is so outdated. We've talked about what you see happening in the future with the children. What do you see happening for the older generations?
You want me to go,
Mary,
Suzy?
you can start with this one.
Well,
you go, Mary.
I call myself an older model, but we're not going to be left behind, because I meet many others in their, late 60s, 70s, 80s saying, I've learned about all of this. I know this is what's going on and what have you. But, I'm getting a bit old now, so I'm maybe not going to be able to see it. And I actually disagree. I think we're going to need the older, experienced elders when everything shifts as it does. And they're certainly not going to be left behind. I think that just the timing of their activation and helping them over this will actually be what will happen. One of the things many years ago, and I've heard it from many others now, is that we get a bit of software or a protocol if we've got a role to play on this planet when things change, because we're going to need a new software to navigate the upgraded human. We're all going to need that. And I believe that that protocol, or whatever it is that we need, is given to all of us that have a role to play. And when the time comes, those that are going to assist the rest of the planet as it activates and wakes up, and for a little while is going to be in confusion perhaps and fear, we will have our role to play. And the elders particularly will be the bridge between the old and the new. And I said, so really the experience of being human in all those years that we've been on the planet are going to be crucial. So if you're an older model, you've still got a role to play. I am absolutely certain of it. And whatever that is, you'll know when the time comes, because that part of your role will be made known to you through your own soul activation or whatever. That's how I've come to understand it, because I can't believe you can go through all your life with all this awareness and understanding, and just before everything, starts and takes off, oh, sorry, now you've moved on. No, it doesn't make any sense. It's not logical, as Spock would say. It doesn't make any sense.
I love that, because in Indigenous societies, the elders were so revered for their wisdom and their knowledge. And, over time, we've kind of relegated them to nursing homes and, whatever. And for them to take back that position of being, some force of good that can share their knowledge and their wisdom and support future generations is perfect. That's how it should be.
Yes, I think so.
Well, we've only got a couple of minutes left. Is there anything that you would like to say while you have this opportunity? Any advice you want to give? Any other, pieces of truth that need to be stop being embargoed, etc.? Any revelations you want to make? Suzy?
I think that the biggest one is that regardless of what it looks like in the outer world, the inner world is being activated 24/7 all day, every day. And the more we tap into that and acknowledge what that avails us of, the faster we come into these capacities that we all have. I see it as a very bright future, a very bright reality. It feels like it's very much going in the right direction. So,
Mary,
I would like to
any
say
last words?
thank you to you both for your wonderful insights and for the chance to be able to share a little bit more of my reality and our realities, but to say to every single person that, you're part of this, that you have all got a role to play. And if you're listening to this, you certainly have a role to play. So trust yourself and trust that resonance, because we need you. So thank you.
Okay, well, to take us to the end then, could you both in turn, and Mary, you can go first, tell our viewers what you have to offer that they could benefit from. What kind of services do you offer to people?
Well, primarily validation for experiences. If you have any kinds of experiences that you want to explore through hypnosis, or you have abilities that are manifesting and you're not quite sure how to put them all together to be, confident of them or whatever. But just simply, if you have, you need someone to talk to about your family or your children that is worrying you because they're very different, I'm there to help you on your way.
Thank you. Suzy?
yeah, same. It's the opportunity to have conversations with people and really start to have as many understand the unique capacities, or you might say the spiritual savantness of those on the spectrum and other kids who are showing up now. It's like I love having that conversation with people. And right now there seems to be almost more of a focus right now on professionals who are working with this population, because it feels like the more information that can be shared with people who are seeing multiple children who are showing up this way, the easier it is to get this within the collective consciousness. So, there's all kinds of opportunities for both professionals and parents through the website.
Thank you both very much. So for more information about Mary Rodwell's books, events, workshops and services, visit maryrodwell.com.au, and you can also go to experiencer.org. And for information on Suzy Miller's private consultations, group integration courses, monthly energetic supports and free offerings, visit SuzyMiller.com. That's it for this month. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer. I'll be back next month on January the 7th and the 21st with another 2-part episode of Conversations Beyond the Cutting Edge. when Father Sean O'Leary and Paul Anthony Wallace will join me to debunk some of the stories in the Old Testament. I hope you'll join me then.